Today, we're going to dig into a really fascinating shift in how we try to solve the world's biggest problems. We're talking about moving away from these huge top-down global plans to a totally new model, one that starts on the ground and is driven by a new kind of innovator. So, let's get into it.
Just look at these images. They get right to the heart of the kind of tangled, messy challenges we're up against, right? Climate change, hunger, people being forced from their homes. You know, experts have a name for these. They call them wicked problems. And for good reason. Their causes are so woven together that there's no single, easy fix. They're stubborn, they're systemic, and they force us to think completely differently.
But, before we can even find new solutions, we have to start by asking some pretty uncomfortable questions. This one, from the Argentine writer Mara Arena, translates to, "What is in the heads of the poor?" Now, I know, that sounds provocative, and it's meant to be. It's designed to make us stop and confront our own assumptions about poverty. And that's a crucial first step before any real change can happen.
So, how has the world tried to get its arms around all this? Well, for decades, the main strategy has been to create these massive, top-down global goals.
Right now, the big plan is something called the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. It's basically a set of 17 goals that are all deeply connected, adopted by pretty much every country on Earth. You can think of it as a huge, shared to-do list for making the world a better place by 2030.
And you can really see a major shift in thinking just by looking at this timeline. Back in 1992, the idea was pretty simple. Governments need to rein in corporations to fix things. But then, by 1999, there was this huge pivot. Leaders started saying, hey, governments can't do this alone. The private sector had to be brought into the conversation, not as the bad guy, but as a partner. The whole conversation shifted from blame to shared responsibility, and that really paved the way for the goals we have today.
But, and this is a big but, here's the reality check. The goals that came before the SDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, they actually made some incredible progress. But when the 2015 deadline rolled around, a lot of the targets just weren't met. We got better at fighting certain diseases, for sure, but the really deep, tough challenges like ending poverty and giving everyone a good education, they were still there. It became painfully clear that these big, top-down goals, while important, just weren't enough to make change happen where it mattered most.
And that's exactly why, to build things that actually work, we have to zoom in. We have to get away from that 30,000-foot view of global targets and get right down to the messy, complicated reality of people's lives. We have to get past the cliches.
This quote from Maya Arena just hits so hard because it takes those kinds of questions that people ask from a place of judgment and answers them with a simple human truth. From the outside, maybe some choices look irrational, but she's saying from the inside, they're often the only choices you have. It's a way to grab onto a little bit of dignity, a little bit of joy, in a world that gives you very little.
And this idea connects perfectly to the work of Nobel laureates Banerjee and Duflo. Their research shows that extreme poverty isn't just about not having cash in your pocket. It's a systemic trap. You don't have access to basic information, like why a certain vaccine is important. There isn't a bank that will safely hold the few dollars you manage to save. The entire world, its systems, its institutions, they just weren't built for you. And that makes every single decision 1,000 times harder.
Economists actually have a name for this. They call it the poverty trap. The basic idea is that if you start out with too little, not enough food, no savings, no education, it's almost impossible to get ahead. It's like trying to climb a muddy hill. Any little gain you make gets wiped out, and you slide right back down, maybe even further than where you started. You're just stuck. But if you can get just enough of a push to get over that hump, suddenly you have a real shot at climbing.
So this whole poverty trap idea is at the center of a massive debate about foreign aid. On one side, you've got people like Jeffrey Sachs, who argue that a big push, a huge investment of aid, is exactly what's needed to get people over that hump. But then, on the other side, you have thinkers like William Easterly and Debisa Moyo, who warn that all that aid can actually backfire. It can create dependency, and it can crush local businesses and local solutions. The fact that the experts themselves are so divided tells you something important. We need a different way of thinking.
And that different way of thinking is what this is all about. It's an approach that completely reframes what we mean by entrepreneurship. We're not just talking about making a profit, we're talking about it as a powerful tool for real social and political change.
Okay, so I need you to just forget the stereotype of some tech bro in a garage trying to be the next billionaire. This new definition sees an entrepreneur as anyone who builds something new to challenge a broken system. It is fundamentally a political act because you're introducing a new idea into the world and you're saying there is a better way to do this. It's about creating new realities, not just new companies.
And this whole world of social innovation has its own lingo. A social enterprise is basically a business that's built from the ground up to solve a social problem. A circular economy is an idea where you design waste out of the system entirely. Innovators use tools like an MVP, or minimum viable product, to test ideas fast and cheap. And a lot of them are funded by impact investing, which is money that's looking for both a social return and a financial one.
All right, so that all sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like in the real world? Let's take a look at a few really powerful examples of this in action.
And as we go through these, you'll see how these new innovators are directly taking on those huge sustainable development goals we talked about, turning that big global ambition into real local action.
So first up, meet Geeky in Brazil. They're going after SDG number 4, quality education. Instead of the old one-size-fits-all classroom model, they use tech to create a totally personalized learning plan for every single student. And this doesn't just bump up test scores, it actually helps close the education gap and gives every kid a real shot at reaching their potential.
Then you've got Zinca in Argentina. They are a perfect example of that circular economy idea. They're tackling SDG 12 by taking trash, I mean literally old discarded tires and fabric scraps, and turning it into awesome sneakers. But here's the kicker. Their impact is twofold. They also intentionally hire people from marginalized communities, giving them job skills and a second chance. It's proof that you can build a business that restores the planet and human dignity at the same time.
And one more, check out Sistema Biobolsa. They're working with small farmers, hitting goals for clean energy and climate action. They have this simple device, a biodigester, that takes animal waste, which is a huge source of pollution, and turns it into clean gas for cooking and amazing organic fertilizer for their crops. It is such a brilliant self-contained solution. It saves families money, it improves their health, and it protects the environment, all in one go.
So, what's the big idea here? What's the thread that connects all these amazing examples? It's a fundamental shift in mindset. It's moving away from the old model of charity and into a new one of partnership and empowerment.
But let's be real for a second. This path is not easy. This data here tells a really interesting story. That first bar shows that a lot of people see opportunities to solve problems. They want to create things. But then look at the second bar. The fear of failure is also sky high. And that just shows you the huge psychological and financial barriers these entrepreneurs are up against every single day.
So what does this new model really need to work? Well, it needs the empathy to understand what Myra Arena was saying, that no one chooses the bathroom they are born into. It needs the scientific rigor to use data and evidence to figure out what actually works, like Banerjee and Duflo. And maybe most importantly, it needs a spirit of co-creation, working with communities, not just doing things for them, to build solutions that are actually going to last.
And all of this leaves us with a final big question to think about. For so long, we've been taught to see business and doing good as two separate things, maybe even opposing forces. But what if that's just a false choice? What if solving the world's most wicked problems isn't just the right thing to do, but it's also the single greatest business opportunity of our lifetime?